Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar, Commercial Office to Residential Conversions in San Francisco, What Matters? If you are here to learn more about the feasibility of office to residential conversions, then you are in the right Zoom room. Welcome. I'm Juliana Choy Sommer. I'm the president of Priority Architectural Graphics. We are the Bay Area's leader in design, fabrication, and installation of both exterior and interior architectural signage. We do this for private and public sector clients in the commercial office, housing, government, transportation, healthcare, and retail sectors. So I'm here today to lead an exciting conversation around this very timely topic affecting commercial real estate. As we know, the pandemic and more recently, the work from home trend in workforce deployment has forever changed downtowns in most cities, including and especially here in San Francisco. Commercial office vacancy rates here in the financial district downtown are now approaching 37%, according to CBRE, resulting in lower property and sales taxes, reduced ridership for public transportation, and declining property values. We continue to see a shortage in housing for Bay Area workers and residents, while we simultaneously face a goal of meeting a California state mandate to add 82,000 affordable homes by 2031. So revitalizing downtown has become a major priority for both private and public sector groups looking to secure San Francisco's economic ecosystem for the future. So one solution here, and a very, very hot topic nationwide, is conversion of office and retail space to residential housing. 3 recent studies have estimated that between 9 and 40% of office space in downtown San Francisco could be viable candidates for such conversions. Today, we're honored to have with us 3 panelists, each with their own unique perspective on this issue. Marc Babsin is president at Emerald Fund, a leading developer in San Francisco with a portfolio of 37 projects from housing to office to retail, totaling over $3 billion in market value. Marc led the conversion project of the old AAA building at 100 Van Ness. Do you remember that? Remember that eyesore? Well, he brought it from office space, not the prettiest office space, but office space to 418 residential rental units in 2015, and he's actively looking at other conversion opportunities across the city. We have Daniella Jimenez, and she is the director of marketing at Guzman Construction Group, a general contractor specializing in affordable and market rate multifamily housing, healthcare, and education. A couple of notable projects that Guzman's currently working on include 78 Haight Street and 2550 Irving, just 2 to name a few, both very important and transformative locations in their respective neighborhoods. And then we have Corey Smith, the executive director at San Francisco's Housing Action Coalition, a nonprofit and advocacy group supporting multifamily housing solutions at all levels of affordability, near jobs, and transit. HAC's advocacy and leadership pushes our region towards the progress of desperately needed housing. So welcome, Marc, Daniella, Corey, and let's start the conversation. And guests, let's please engage you through chat throughout the conversation. We may have time for some Q&A, and we'll be scanning chat throughout the conversation. All right, let's get started. So the recent 2023 study from Spur, Gensler, and HRNA Advisors, which I think, Marc, you even participated in, pointed to 5 key primary factors when looking at conversion potential for office space. Number 1, site context. So does it have natural light? Does it have proximity to transportation? Ideally, do we have south-facing building? Number 2, building form and shape. Number 3, the floor plate. What's the window to core distance? Where are the elevators? Number 4, the envelope. So what are the window to wall ratios? And then servicing, number 5, servicing potential. So for example, what's the parking situation? What's the utility service situation? So Daniella, I'd like to start with you with the first question. So what are some other factors which matter when looking at building design and the viability of converting traditional office space to residential space in San Francisco?
Yeah, no, thanks, Juliana. And I'm really happy to be a part of this really exciting topic. Just from a personal standpoint, I'm a San Francisco native born and raised. So this is a topic that hits really close to home. So when we're looking at how the complexity of converting existing space into affordable housing space, you'd think it's a simple solution, right? For somebody that's kind of looking at it from a simpler term, the building space is there, the structures are in place. How do we just move people in there? And unfortunately, it's not really that simple. From a builder standpoint, there's a lot of early collaboration that we have to do with our design teams. So I think kind of looking at how we can address this, I think there's some really unique opportunities for design build when you're looking at converting existing office space to residential, because there's a lot of things that we need to take in consideration here. For example, something very simple. If you look at a typical office floor plate, you're looking at more open office space, but maybe you're not going to have a restroom in every suite like you would in a residential space. So you're going to have to look at what those, mechanical and plumbing systems look like. So that's where you kind of, for us as a general contractor, we'd want to engage our MEP design trades and even the architect very early to see if we can get in there and just really take a look around to see where we can maneuver around, get really creative with the design and the constructability of putting in those, complex systems. But I think another thing that we also have to take into consideration when we're looking to build in an existing space, especially a unique area like San Francisco, is historic preservation and seismic retrofit. We live in San Francisco. It is, we're known for our earthquakes. But another beautiful thing that we're known for is our historic preservation of our buildings. One specific example that just came out, and I'm sure a bunch of you read about it in the news, is how do you preserve the historic architectural integrity of some of our neighborhoods? So a good example is our Jackson Square neighborhood. They were looking to put in some high-rise affordable housing, maybe some market rate housing in there to address the problem. But ultimately, we came to a standstill, and now we have to relook at how we can creatively get in there as builders, developers, and architects. So I think another thing that we should take a look at is how can we get creative in the layout, because we're trying to address space configuration. And I think one thing that I've noticed in some of these other neighborhoods in San Francisco, and I'm going to be a little bit biased here because I just moved there, is the dog patch. There's a lot of space for the work design, where a lot of people have found these areas such as Soma Mission Bay, Dog Patch, the Mission, where if we're looking at, okay, the return to office may not be coming back, can we design and build housing space that can make it work for everybody? So I think those are some types of things that we have to consider. And that's why I'm probably recommending that maybe this is an opportunity for us as builders to go the design build route, just because I think if you bring the developer, the designers, the trades, our built environment trade partners who come to the table early to provide creative design options, if we're all at the table for this, we can come up with ways to make this work. That way we're all not working in a vacuum. And then to address, not the elephant in the room, but something that we're all kind of facing is the cost of construction. When we're pricing all of these things and the designer and the developer come up with a vision, and we as the builder have to drop that news of, well, this is how much it's going to cost. Just because as you make these complex conversions and interior renovations, they're a lot more complex, as we're finding, than a ground up construction.
Mm-hmm. Very complex. This is the need. I hear you, Daniella. The need for collaboration early is just paramount. These are just very complex projects from a construction standpoint. Okay, so Corey, I'm going to switch to you. As you know, developing and building in San Francisco has a long history of being difficult, not the easiest town to work in. But it feels like there's a growing political consensus around San Francisco that conversions of office space offer a positive step to help create housing and urban revitalization in general. So can you talk us through what it's like now, actually like to get a conversion project off the ground here in the Bay Area.
Yeah. Thank you to my fellow panelists and for priority for hosting this conversation and inviting me as well. You mentioned the idea of collaboration and getting in there early and having these conversations. And that's actually a little bit of what we've had with this office to housing conversion topic. Partially because we're not talking about building new buildings, so there's no new shadows out there for anti-housing folks to be unhappy about. But there is a consensus amongst generally, I think, San Francisco residents at large and even up in the state legislature that these are the types of housing projects that most people, and I do actually mean that, most people want to see have happen. Even within San Francisco specifically, our full delegation to the state legislature, Senator Weiner and Assembly members Ting and Haney, they all had bills this year aimed at trying to help get these conversions going. And the reason for that is because the financial feasibility is really difficult. And that's something that Mark is much more of an expert on, and he'll touch on in a minute. But when we are able to see the state legislature saying, okay, we want to try to have the approval process for these buildings just happen faster, so there's less risk, no discretion if you're going to try to do these sorts of conversions, coupled with everything that Daniella was talking about in terms of the inner workings of a building. Even this last March, there was a ballot measure in San Francisco, Proposition C, which HAC was a proud supporter of, that waived the transfer tax on office to housing conversions. And in an environment right now where it is quite literally impossible to get projects to pencil, if you will, having these cost reductions is a major needle mover in trying to get these projects to actually move forward. Because when we're talking about the opportunity sites here, it's not the Salesforce Tower that's going to be converting. Generally speaking, office is broken down into different types. And what we're looking at here is Class B and Class C office. So older office that is generally less desirable, that is probably no more than 4, 5, 6, 7 stories at its most. Those are the places where there is an opportunity to do these conversions, but a bunch of things actually have to happen to make it happen. But from a political point of view, I think voters are there. I actually think for the most part, San Francisco City Hall is there that they want to be moving these things forward. But there's really a challenge, and at the end of the day, that challenge is math. And when Mark looks at a building, he says, okay, how much is it going to cost me to actually do this? And you run all the formulas. The math isn't quite there yet. So we need to keep that momentum going in order to actually take advantage of the consensus that we have right now, because consensus and legislation are great. People don't live in those things. We need to build homes for people, or rather, Mark and Daniella need to build homes for people. That's more their job than my job. But I think we can get there, but we still have a little bit of a ways to go. Unfortunately, we actually have the answers.
That's interesting to hear. So it seems like political will has come. Political will is not the issue.
Right.
Financial feasibility.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. So, all right. Financial feasibility is the front and center, is the issue here, from what we're hearing, to getting these projects launched. Okay. So, in a Spur study, the high cost of construction in San Francisco is creating disincentives for developers to pursue these conversion projects. I read there's an estimated gap of about $250,000 per unit between the cost of conversion and the revenue potential. So it's a significant gap to overcome. Okay, so Mark, I'm going to shift to you from the developer's perspective. What do you see as the lay out the current financial barriers to progress around conversions in the city? And what kind of hurdles do we have to overcome to increase this pace of project launch?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Juliana. And Corey, thanks for queuing that up. Development doesn't work. It doesn't work right now. I was just in Santa Monica over the weekend with my wife. There were more tower cranes on just one random street in Santa Monica than there are in all of San Francisco right now. Like, just development doesn't work. And it's a simple matter of, it's a math problem. It's what does it cost to produce your product? And then what is it worth afterwards? And if it's not worth more than it costs, no one's going to lend you money, or no one's going to invest money in that. So we've got that. Then we've got this possibility of conversion. We have an urban story where there is all sorts of class B and C buildings that are kind of going to be zombie buildings, and it will take like literally decades. There's a study that shows it would take like 50 years of normal absorption in good times to fill those B and C office buildings. So we don't want that like blight on the vitality of downtown. We also want to try to come up with development that financially works. So the right building, and when we've looked at, so we did 100 Van Ness, which was recognized as the best residential project in the entire country in 2015. And we've gone and looked at least a dozen office buildings, B and C office buildings in San Francisco. We bring in the architect, contractor, structural, MEPs, come up with a plan, contractor prices it, look at rents, put in the pro forma. And what we found time after time is, well, A, it doesn't work. We kind of knew that. But what would need to happen to make it work? And the right building can be delivered for about 70% of the cost of new construction. So already your infeasibility gap is shrinking down from 100 to 70. It's like, okay, it's getting a little better. And we've identified 4 levers that, if present, would actually, excuse me, would make a number of these buildings work. The first is transfer tax, and that's what Corey already mentioned. Measure C in last March reduced the transfer tax just one time if you convert a building from office to residential from 6% to 0. So you save 6%. Number 2 is property taxes. And a lot of cities around the country have looked at property taxes as a way to reduce the burden, because that's one of the largest expenses you have operating a building, is the check you write for property taxes every year. And currently, Assemblymember Ting has some legislation that would give 30 years of relief to about half of the property taxes of the increment, not of the what you acquire the building for, but the amount that you're putting into it. And this would have to pass the state, then the city would also have to take action. So it's a 2-step process. Step 1, pass the assembly. It's now going to the Senate. That's number 2, is property taxes. Number 3 is affordability. It's kind of like the third rail or whatever. It's a big burden. Affordability, the board recently reduced it from 23 to 15%, but 15 is still a major burden. And so the Ting bill has 3 million square feet. The first 3 million that would be converted would not have affordability. The city would also have to adopt that, but that's a huge one. And then fourth and finally, historic tax credits. So if it's an old building that would qualify, that's some good federal resources. If you have all 4 of those, and the fourth one's already there, the historic's already there, and the transfer tax. So all we're talking about now is property taxes and affordability. If you get those 2, I think you're going to see a lot of conversions in downtown San Francisco, because developers like me have nothing to do. And not just those that have done it before, but you know, a lot will try to do this because if it actually would pencil.
Oh my goodness, everybody. Mark is bored. He's got nothing to do. We've got to get him. Okay, that's interesting. 4 levers. You distilled it down. Developers like you have distilled it down to 4 levers, and we've actually already kind of tackled 2 out of the 4, right? So we've got kind of 2 of the 4 that we really can focus on. Very interesting. So I'm going to bounce it back to you, Corey. So knowing that we've got these 4 levers, Mark clearly defined them. What do you see as potential policy changes at the city and county of San Francisco level that could start to move the needle, that could start to make a difference when it comes to getting these off the ground?
Well, the first thing I really actually also want to hammer home is we got to remember what the status quo is today, and it's empty office buildings. So this idea that what we have today is working well is not actually true at all. So when we get into this conversation about potentially reducing the on-site inclusionary requirements or property taxes, right? The incentive, the thing that we're trying to create is this economic activity and this interest in these conversions. Because without that, property taxes will stay the same. And without that, the office buildings that are empty will have 0 affordable housing in them. So we're trying to create this environment where it actually is feasible to do something that adds a net positive to the city as a whole. I mean, I'm a little bit you know, on one hand, it is something that the city of San Francisco notably has issues with change. And on the other hand, it's just math. And I don't mean to be overly flip with it, but at the end of the day, it really is just addition and subtraction, right? And if you're able to actually create that incentive to do these conversions to deliver homes for people, then it's positive. And if you want empty office space that is just sitting there with the lights off, then it's more of the same. And so when we're talking to people at City Hall, I think folks are starting to get that. The voters certainly understood that. Just taking a moment and recognizing that the voters in San Francisco decided to hold back a tax on development because they went, we don't want these empty office spaces. Yeah, make this housing. We want San Francisco's oldest neighborhood to become San Francisco's newest neighborhood. The buildings have been identified. And we've got the target and we've got the blueprint. The political will is starting to get there, but I still even think there's some inertia at City Hall, and folks are fearful of what it may mean to put forward some of these changes. But when we show what is happening there today, what the status quo actually is, that is actually frankly our biggest argument as to why we should be making these changes. And it is different levels to pull at a local and a state level. We're certainly hopeful Assemblymember Ting's bill moves through and we can talk to the city of San Francisco to try to get the local implementation. As always, things lead back to Prop 13 and the way that property taxes work in this state certainly makes a difference on this. But the status quo isn't working. And as we talk to folks at the city, the decision makers, I think there's an increased desire to remove some of these barriers to actually deliver the public good, which is more homes for people at the end of the day. That's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. No, it's good insight. Okay, clearly we have our work cut out for us. Marc, I'm going to bounce it back to you because you mentioned a moment ago that this is not uniquely a San Francisco problem, that this has been tackled by other metro areas. We do not have the only downtown that has or needs revitalization, certainly in history. So can you talk a little bit about what other cities or metro areas, what they've accomplished, which might serve as a model for us here in the Bay Area?
Yeah, this is very common today, kind of throughout the country in downtowns, east to west to Midwest. We have a great model in New York, Lower Manhattan in the 1990s. This is before 9/11. They realized they had a glut of office space in Lower Manhattan. And they said, hey, if you do a conversion to residential, you get 14 years and no property taxes, the base or the increment. And it worked like amazingly. 13 million square feet of office was converted to 13,000 residential units. Then that program ended and the conversions have continued. I think there's about 25,000 housing units now in Lower Manhattan, more than there were in the late 90s. And Lower Manhattan has performed a lot better than other downtown areas across the country because of that mix of uses. This time around, we're seeing Boston recently announce a 30-year property tax abatement for conversions. Chicago has done it, Minneapolis, Calgary's giving developers just $75,000 just straight away, here's some cash. We are more challenged in California because of Prop 13, so you kind of have to go through a little bit of hijinks and you kind of create an infrastructure tax district, which is similar to redevelopment, and there's all these sort of things that need to happen, but it is possible to get there. And other cities are doing it. You know, other cities around the country are saying, we know the numbers don't work. We've got to make the numbers better for the stuff that we can control. The cities can't control construction costs or rents, but they can control fees and taxes. And that's what they're working on all around the country.
Can you talk, Marc, a little bit about Phil Ting's legislation? Is he proposing a tax, a certain district, or can you talk through that a little bit?
Yeah, currently is going to get a little kind of arcane, but Jerry Brown got rid of redevelopment areas. And so since then, infrastructure tax districts are allowed to draw a border on an area and capture the increment. So you build something new, the value goes up, you capture the value for that area. It's usually meant for infrastructure improvements like parks or transit. Currently, it's not allowed for market rate housing. So Phil Ting's bill would allow market rate housing to be covered as a beneficiary. So that would allow the return of the tax dollars for an individual project back to that project. It would involve drawing a line around a map and have a certain number of years. In this case, it's 30 years. It would also require the locality, in this case, San Francisco, to take action. So the state in itself can't create the district. It can create the power or the ability for San Francisco to create the district. And our hope is that whatever the next administration and board will be, they would be in favor of creating such a district in C2, C3 to allow for these conversions and allow for those benefits to accrue to the conversions.
Okay. What are these districts called?
You can call it whatever you want. It's just a line around downtown.
Yeah, okay.
IFD and EIFD is the acronym Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District, EIFD.
IFD. Okay.
Kind of like the new redevelopment.
Like the new, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to shift the conversation to just discussing some other benefits to these projects this churn can create around San Francisco's economic landscape. So Daniella, if you can put some thought around what could be some other kind of cascading effects, right? If we start to build some churn, some activity around these conversions, let's talk through together what happens when we go from concept to action.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're learning just, post-pandemic is, the work from home, hybrid work is here to stay. So, I mean, we really can't sit around and twirl our thumbs and hope that, it's going to go back to how it was. I think we have to start accepting that this is the new normal. And so how do we pivot? Because what happens if we continue to let these office buildings in a great area like downtown San Francisco stay vacant? I mean, they become an area where, you're going to start seeing a rise of crime. Unfortunately, you're going to see, a lot more folks that are unhoused. Open air drug use. So when you have these spaces that are just not activated, it tends to bring more of a negative attention. And then the businesses that are there, they either fail or they move away. So I think reactivating the vacant space is going to be key to economic rebound. You have to find opportunities to stimulate these small businesses that are there. So if we do start getting some work in there, we do start seeing more construction and improvements to this district, the small businesses that are currently there are going to see an uptick, and there's just going to be a lot more opportunities for them to grow. Also to take into consideration of what happens when construction in San Francisco starts to grow. If we're not providing opportunity to these other small businesses, especially our small local business contractors that depend on developers and general contractors to have work, they're not getting opportunities if we're not getting opportunities. So it really does become a cascade effect of if there's work, if there's change, if there's growth, we're all going to feel it on the upside. And I think another thing that we should take a look at is what do the neighborhoods that have grown and flourished and rebounded post-pandemic, what do they have in common? They're places that are desirable to live. And so if we can find a way to spread that love out and make these neighborhoods a lot more of a desirable place to live, not necessarily just for the single working person, but if we can make it a place where housing is desirable for all, we'll see that growth. But I am excited because I think San Francisco has started to find creative ways to bring life back. I mean, we're starting to see the comeback of parades, block parties, festivals. So though that foot traffic, enhances opportunities for small businesses. But I think honestly, what I'm really excited for, not just as a builder, but, being able to build for developers and then bring those opportunities to our small business that are subcontractors, designers, consultants, and trades so that they can feel the love too.
Yeah. I like to call that churn, right? We need to kind of inspire churn because churn cascades down. It really penetrates and it's stimulative down to all levels of our small business community. Yeah, it's very thought-provoking. So, okay, it makes me think. I have another question for you three. More of like a poll. All right, so I'm gonna ask you guys your optimism level. How optimistic are you that San Francisco can step up and take this leadership role around these steps and start to create this churn? What's your optimism level? Let's start with you, Mark.
Yeah, it's pretty high. I mean, San Francisco does have a character, a track record of coming back and resurgence, and the phoenix rising from the ashes, I think, is in the logo. And so, yeah, opportunity knocks. There does seem to be an alignment across the political spectrum, as Corey mentioned, which does not happen all that often in San Francisco.
Never.
So, hopefully we keep it up. We keep the clean and safe. We keep the neighborhoods improving, and we bring some people downtown. And if you bring them downtown and they're living downtown, they're going to go shop at the cafe and the corner grocery store, and create some vitality that we've been missing these past number of years.
Mm-hmm. Daniella, what's your optimism level?
I just, piggybacking off what Mark said, and I love that he said that, is San Francisco does have a history of bouncing back. We are, I would like to say that we are the adopters of like wanting to do the cool things, wanting not to be the first, but how different we can do it. And I think, wanting to be different, wanting to be that really growing progressive city. We just need to get creative in how to identify ways to bring the city back, because, let's be honest, we all live here. We all we love the Bay Area. San Francisco specifically, it's one of the most beautiful cultured cities in the world, and we have to find a way to feed it the love that it needs. So, but very optimistic, and that's why that I work for the firm that I do, is because we really do focus on delivering affordable homes and communities, and as long as folks like us are at the table right now thinking of ways to do it, we have to be optimistic.
Yeah. Corey, how about you? Where are you?
So, I'm certainly optimistic because I like the previous two had mentioned, like I've seen a history book as it relates to San Francisco, and the death of San Francisco has been written many, many times. And it's a story of fiction, and we all know that. And we're starting to see some of these positive market indicators come back up. This idea of, okay, people are starting to return to the office more often. I'm right near the Trans-America building is my office. I'm in downtown every day. Over the last couple of years, you're starting to see a little bit more of that activity. But quite frankly, the idea that we're leading on this, I think, is just flat out not true, right? New York did it 25 years ago. Other cities around the United States are doing this because they realize, hey, we have this underutilized resource and we could do something better with it. And it's great that the daytime activity has really increased for downtown San Francisco. And we're not going to build 82,000 homes in San Francisco. I know that wasn't what you were implying or what anybody actually thinks, but there's a relatively straightforward opportunity here if you just sort of follow the numbers. It's actually not all that complicated. Daniella was talking earlier about this energy and investment into our city breeds more energy and investment and gives us the opportunity to not just provide homes for people, but provide customers for our small businesses and foot traffic on our streets throughout the day. And so on one hand, I'm like, this is so obvious. Why would we not want to be doing these things? And then again, sort of the inertia of San Francisco and a little bit of that long-term anti-change sort of mindset is still there. Like I said, downtown San Francisco is definitely coming back. The mayor, Mayor Breed, has put forward a 30 by 30, I believe is the name of her plan, with the aim of trying to have 30,000 residents in downtown San Francisco by the year 2030. Very fortunate to say this idea of the transfer tax, by the way, that passed the ballot this last March was not out of thin air. It was the mayor asking folks, we want to be putting forward these conversions. What do you need? And Mark and a bunch of others went and they did the math and they looked at the research and they said, hey, here is a big needle mover. If you actually want to see these conversions happen, you have to give us a break on this one-time transfer tax. And the mayor said, okay, great, on the ballot, put it out to voters. Voters agreed, this is a good idea. So again, the playbook is actually there. We know what the solution is. Mark literally just put them on a bullet point list. The political will to get there is a little bit harder. The speed of government to actually make it happen in a timely fashion is a little bit harder. And for investment itself, I think it's also important to understand that when Mark looks to try to go out and get a loan to build a building, folks love downtown San Francisco because it really is, it's the economic engine for, I think we're now the fourth largest economy in the world. So it's a place where we know everybody wants to be. But the risk associated with building in San Francisco really drives up the cost. So if we're able to turn down that risk, if we're able to turn down some of these fees and taxes, if the energy and that enthusiasm and that optimism that I think all of us believe in San Francisco is certainly, if that comes back to the level that we want, then I think we can get there. But the playbook is there. This isn't complicated. It's just math at the end of the day. And if we want to be real about that, we can make these honest trade-offs and try to figure out how to actually have these conversions. And if we decide we don't want to do that, there's more old office space that will be available that nobody will ever want. And that doesn't really help anybody now, does it?
I still go back. I mean, it's just incredible that Mark distilled it down to just 4 levers, right? And it just comes down to math that really boils down to these 4 points. Question for you, Mark, of these levers. So we have transfer tax, we have property tax relief, maybe in the form of, EIFDs. We have lowering the percentage of affordable units needing to go down, that inclusionary percentage. And then finally, historic tax credits. And we've kind of looking at those 4. Can you explain, of these 4 levers, which has the most leverage, right? Kind of, if you can maybe go from 1 to 4, which moves the needle the most out of the 4?
Property tax and affordable, I'm trying to remember my math. We've got it on some sheets, but I think the property tax and affordable are the highest, then transfer tax, and then the historic tax credits. So it's, it just breaks down. You mentioned 250 or 260 a unit, which is the shortfall, which it's what we found as well. The first 2 are a little bit over 60,000 and the other 2 are a little bit, below it. So, and it varies by building, but roughly that's the benefit per door. If you take affordable and go from 15% requirement to 0, it's worth about 60,000 a door. That's the burden on your market rate project per door of having that obligation. Just in general, market rate development, market rate housing development has been asked to shoulder a lot of the ills, solve the problems of a lot of the city, transportation and schools and affordable housing. It's asked to do all that while actually building a building that is worth more than it costs to build. And, at some point it just doesn't work anymore. And that's the point we've reached. So we're trying to remove these burdens, at least just temporarily, so we can get some projects going.
Okay. So it sounds like of the 4, we've kind of tackled the transfer tax, historic tax credit, those kind of move the needle less than the other 2. So it's really going to take some collaboration to get these other 2 really discussed. It's fascinating.
And it's just a general desire for the city to actually build. I mean, the city is notorious for being the most difficult place in the entire United States. We have a historic housing shortage in California. And as Mark just pointed out, people look to new housing builders to go, okay, great. We know we need a bunch of housing and that's all fine, but can you also pay for that park? And we also need some school money. We also need this. And all of those things are good, right? I want Mark, no offense, Mark, to have to pay as much as Mark possibly can while the thing still moves forward. But if the project doesn't move forward, then we don't get anything good, let alone the housing, which I'm a believer we need more homes for people. That is actually the most valuable public good that we can put out there, market rate or affordable, the whole spectrum. We need more of all of it. So again, this is all trying to drive towards outcomes that we all say we want. But then when you actually put it down on paper and look at the math, there's some heartburn around some of these decisions, but I think we're getting there.
Let's talk about who, you know, who we're trying to attract, right, to move into these potentially B and C office building flips. I imagine maybe not families, right? But can we talk through who you all think is the target market for these conversions, right? Who wants to live downtown?
Well, I think that a lot of them are going to be affordable by design, is kind of the lingo we've been using recent years, in that I don't think there's going to be the class A cream of the cream buildings. 100 Van Ness happens to be. We strip it's a tower with big views, and we strip the whole building down and put in all these amenities. But the buildings we've been looking at will be more, they'll be more of a budget alternative. They're still going to be market rate, but someone who wants to live near transit, because there's going to be, by definition, there's going to be transit downtown. Someone that doesn't need a car as much, someone that there's going to be about a lot of bike lanes nearby. And so, yeah, it reaches more of the income scale than typically a lot of the new development is aimed towards the higher end, and then it kind of, trickles down, and that more housing stock gets available as that gets grabbed. But this, I don't think would, for most part, it's building by building, but I think you're going to be more kind of in the middle, less class A delivered, so lower rents by definition.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. Students who are going to school, perhaps somebody at University of California Law, San Francisco, or City College, or perhaps somebody who's starting out their professional career. They're moving to San Francisco because they got their first ever job. They're 23 years old, and they're working somewhere in Soma. And it'd be great, a 15-minute walk to work every single morning. Right? It's one of the most, downtown San Francisco is one of the most walkable neighborhoods that exists. And for young folks, especially, or the other end of that spectrum, older adults, right? The single family homeowners who have owned that house out in the Sunset District for a really long time, and they're tired of coming downtown, such a long commute to go to the shows, or maybe head over to the East Bay for a day at Alameda or something like that, right? It's an opportunity for older adults to live in a more walkable neighborhood as well. And then, by the way, that also opens up a lot of the around the city single family homes for families. It's not one solution that's going to be perfect for everybody, but if you ever had to look for a home, the number one thing you want is options. If you don't have any options on where you get to live, and I guess Daniella can maybe talk about this with her recent experience, like if you don't have choices, it sucks. And just trying to provide more options for folks, while at the same time solving a downtown revitalization problem, just seems to make a lot of sense.
These solutions are all very enmeshed.
Yeah.
Daniella,
Yeah,
sorry.
no, I was just going to say, yeah, no, Corey, for sure. When my wife and I were looking for our first home, we had to make a list based on what our lifestyle was like. We needed a place that was close to freeways, but also close to public transportation. Can I walk to work? Can I bike to work? Safety, if we're going to walk outside at night. But also the things to take in consideration. I think another group of people that would find this area and find these conversions pretty desirable are young up and coming entrepreneurs. The AI trend is looking, and you're seeing a lot of young startups. We're seeing it for sure. The interest of young startups coming here to bring their product to life, and the work live model, the designs of those lofts are a lot more appealing to those entrepreneurs, because there could be a couple of them that live there, and they can work and they can do everything from their home, and at the same time go outside, walk to the cafe, take the train down to where they need to be. So as you're starting to see this new group of young professionals that are coming up that want to make their place and find a life in a city, those types of designs and those types of homes would be very appealing to them.
And as Mark said, the desire is there, this affordable by design. There's a big market that would love to live in this types of housing if these homes were available.
let's pull on this thread a little bit. Let's kind of go into the archetype of this kind of young professional student that's attracted to affordable by design. What other efforts could the city be focused on to even more, right, to make downtown a more desirable place to live, right? What are some attractions that could be features?
I think the programming, that's what we've been seeing, the night markets and the festivals. People want to be around people, right? I think we've done a pretty good job of the clean and safe. It feels like it is cleaner and safer, but you still need activation. No one wants to be the only person walking around Union Square. And so the night markets have been popular. Have more of those. Have more art events, just music events, bring people out, activate, because that just begets more people and more activation.
And we don't need to just build housing downtown to revitalize downtown. Housing in the Richmond district is also a downtown revitalization strategy, right? When Mark's talking about you create those reasons for people to come downtown in the evening, there was about a week and a half ago, I was unfortunately not feeling well. There was an Indian dance party. I'm spacing on the name of the holiday, an Indian holiday in Union Square. And it was just like a Friday night dance party that existed in the middle of the street. It's like those types of things that are unequivocally fun. Like fun stuff brings people out, right? It ain't rocket science.
We're social creatures.
Right? Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that makes San Francisco great is the fact that when you live in a city like San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, there's third place. There's an opportunity to go out and meet new people. I can't even count the number of times that I have met a new acquaintance just from bumping into the same people at the cafes or just happening to meet people while you're waiting for a train. If there's something fun, regardless of where they live in San Francisco, like you said, Corey, in the Richmond district, people will find a way to get there. Public transit, the Muni trains are running there. People will find a way. Like, for example, we've got two or three big festivals that are going to be coming up in San Francisco this summer, all the way to the fall. People will find a way to get there. If there's something fun, people will go. So, and it's just a matter of it kind of going back to affordability by design. There just needs to be more housing. If there's a lot more people that can afford to live here, the desire is going to be back. And it's just tough because we have a housing shortage, supply and demand. And people are not going to want to live here if it's too expensive.
And then when you get that housing with, additional efforts to get office workers to come back downtown, trying to create those incentives in the Class A office buildings, accompanied with different tax incentives you can have to help small businesses because you need the restaurants and the cafes and the bars and the art galleries to help create that neighborhood, right? It's got to be all encompassing. But if you're able to pull all of these levers the right amount at the right time, along with just frankly the energy that will come back and is coming back to San Francisco that we all believe in, that's really where we hope we can get a spark and really create a fun, vibrant, creative, artsy, funky, quintessentially San Francisco neighborhood in San Francisco's oldest neighborhood all at the same time.
It's been there before.
Right?
We need to find these levers to bring
Maybe
it
not
back.
the full Barbary Coast vibes. I don't know if we go that far back on everything, but we'll take some of the good pieces and try to stick with it.
Yeah, I just think about, the fact that this can come back, and also we can have this just a stimulative, right? This effect, the churn, going back to how, once we get it kickstarted, it can really cascade out, right, to the entire ecosystem. So I'm thinking about, just like Daniella was talking about, our small businesses, our LBEs, our small businesses in the construction industry. And, Marc, would you be, for example, open to if we could somehow get LBEs involved and there could be some sort of tax credit for either, property taxes or that affordability percentage, in exchange for using LBEs to create this kind of stimulative effect? Would you be open to a program like that?
Yeah, we're interested in the lower costs. So if the credits are going to be greater than the additional cost of hiring the LBEs, we're for it. If it's not going to, we're not for it. We're just trying to balance out the costs and the benefits. So
I'm hearing the theme. It's math, folks. It's simple, simple math. It's just math. Get it to pencil out for Mark and
Yeah.
and yeah, and just get it moving. It's simple math. And there's 4 levers, 2 have somewhat been pulled. The other 2, he's lined it out. He's laid it out. These are the other 2 that we can pull and create this churn. It's just really exciting that, just as you say, Corey, it's not complicated. It's there. And we actually aren't necessarily leading. We're just kind of doing.
But that's great. We have the blueprint, and we can look to the cities to figure out what some of the unintended consequences were of some of the decisions they made, so we can ensure that these types of changes are truthfully done in an equitable and inclusive manner, consistent with the values that the city really correctly puts forward.
Right. Well, I want to just take a moment to thank you again to these 3 wonderful panelists, our audience, Marc, Daniella, Corey. You guys are just simply fantastic thought leaders. You've really synthesized. I feel like you just synthesized what we need to do in about 45 minutes. It's pretty incredible. So I'm just going to close it out. At Priority Architectural Graphics, we're committed to hosting ongoing discussions like this one around relevant and timely topics impacting the Bay Area ecosystem and specifically the construction ecosystem. We want to help lead that conversation. I am a firm believer that business leaders and advocates, we can move the needle. We can find better ways to work together and continue the Bay Area's longstanding role as an innovator. Let's bring Barbary Coast back. Let's bring the vibe back. We can do it. I hope you'll join us again this fall. Our next webinar is going to be around supportive housing. So thanks everyone for joining us, and thanks everyone for staying innovative and inspired. I hope you guys have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.